edition of Climate Wednesday. My name is Ruka Odebi, and I'm a member of ICCDI. As you already know, this is like a weekly schedule for us, and this is another edition. Over the past weeks, I've had my colleagues and our very intelligent hosts talk about food security and nature-based solutions. We've talked about biodiversity and nature-based solutions. So today, our topic for today will be to restoration of mangroves. And so being our host today, being our guest today, I would like you to give us a brief on how we can meet you, who you are, and what you do.
Thank you so much. My name is Rona. I am from the Prime Initiative for Green Development NGO here in Port Harcourt City. This NGO our initial aim was to help people, but due to the needs and mental needs now is to help people so that they can help themselves and help the environment. Personally, I'm a writer, a data analyst, and a student of nature. So I give Prime Initiative for Green Development my all for now.
Thank you very much. So it looks like you have a big portfolio. You're a writer, you're a nature lover, and all of that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. So quickly, we'll be asking you some basic questions so we can get a more understanding of what mangrove is and how we can restore mangroves. So my first question here will be, what are mangroves and why are they important?
Thank you so much. Mangroves are trees in the family Rhizophoraceae. Now, these trees, they are salt-loving trees. They live in shorelines between land and sea or estuaries. They are always found in salt water. Now, mangroves, we may look at them like ordinary trees because they are just trees there. But remember their location between land and salt water. They act as buffer between land and salt water. If the soil erosion is going towards the sea, mangrove traps it. If sea waves are coming to the land to cause flooding, mangrove traps it. As trees, mangroves are also sequestration to carbon. Just 1 hectare of mangrove can collect more than 360 tons of burning coal yearly. To tell you the use of mangroves. Now, that's not all. Mangroves act as breeding spots for both fish, birds, mammals, and everything. So because of their roles in nature, mangroves promote biodiversity. Now, that is their importance as well as what they are. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was going to say, in a nutshell, we're saying mangroves are kind of home to a lot of organisms and animals in the natural environment, right? And then aside from that, they help in a lot of kind of mitigation against some kind of natural disaster, right? And the risk of natural disaster in our environment. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. And so my next question will be, what is the most effective way to save mangroves? We already know that there's been so much talks about how if you lose a mangrove, you might not be able to get it back. So how are we able to save the mangroves effectively? And maybe can give us examples of the ways we can do this.
Thank you so much. As you already know, most of us, or let me say many people who may be watching us now may not have seen mangroves before, because mangroves are just at the shoreline between land and sea. It means that if we want to look at Nigeria as a case study, mangroves should be in these shoreline states such as Lagos, Delta, and other Niger Delta states. It means that if we want to help restore mangroves, we need to focus on the communities in which there are mangroves. That is it, number one, because most of these communities, they are the ones who cut the mangroves as firewood, use it for other stuff. So we need to encourage them. We need to teach them the uses of mangroves. We need to teach them the ecological services of mangroves, that if they are gone, this is what will happen to you. Though they are now experiencing it, there are now more rates of flooding in states like Bayelsa and Rivers State because of the reduced mangrove, because there's no more mangrove to hold their trees. So we need to teach them alternatives on what they can do. Then also, if we can talk to the leaders of such communities, such as the king, if they have a king, that this is the use of mangrove, and this is what you can do to prevent people from destroying mangroves. It will also help. So my own advice for us is that we should focus on the communities, because only they have the sustainable means of looking for alternative of mangrove and stop the use of mangrove for firewood.
Thank you for that. So if I get you clearly, you're advising that we do more like orientation for the grassroots
Sorry,
community members. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Elijah?
sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Your mic is off.
Is it better now, Elijah? Can you hear me now?
Not really.
Can you hear me now, Elijah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. So I was saying in brief, I was saying that the most effective way, or one of the most effective ways to save mangrove is to make sure that there's involvement with the grassroots members of the community, and also to bring up major players or major influencers like the community leaders to be able to make ensure that these people know the importance of mangroves, and they should know the importance and the resulting consequences when there's no mangrove again. You talk about the flooding that is happening along the coastal region. So basically, orientation is key to the effective measures in saving mangroves. I think that's what you said in brief, if I'm correct.
You are correct.
So my next question now, I'm just going to ask, what are the sustainable and community-based model for mangrove? You talked about talking to community leaders and giving orientation to people in the grassroots, but is there a particular model that is going to work sustainably and is community-based? And how can we harness and accelerate these models to make sure that it's being implemented and it actually gives us the result that we want?
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. Okay, we know that these communities, they are the ones who usually use the mangroves as fuel and firewood. So even if we want to say plant a new mangrove, if we want to plant a new set of mangrove, we don't have any assurance that when these mangroves become matured in 5 or 10 years time, these same communities will not cut it. We don't have that assurance. So what the community and sustainable based model to save mangroves is to concentrate on the orientation of the community, number one, and if possible involve the government and have a roundtable with the community leaders. Let them look for alternatives to using mangroves, and that's it. Give them the orientation, have a roundtable with the government and the community leaders, and all together we can save or restore our mangroves.
Okay, so in a nutshell, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hear you.
Okay, so
Yes,
in
I
a
can hear
nutshell,
you.
we're still going back to the fact that we need the basic influencers, the key players in the communities, to influence the attitude of the people in the community, because they will definitely listen to them, and then they have more control. They understand their people better, and they'll be able to influence their attitude towards the way they treat the mangroves. Okay, so going on to the next question, I would like to know, are there stories of mangrove restoration that we already have? Like any
Yes, we
story
have.
that you can, yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of stories here in Port Harcourt. Number one, there is an NGO here in Port Harcourt that has a lot of mangrove seedlings. What this NGO they do is to grow mangrove, and the name of this their movement is Mangrove Marathon. They are currently having a campaign here in Port Harcourt, Save Niger Delta Mangrove. As at last year before the pandemic, they organized a conference in which every member or every guest in that conference participated in growing mangroves. And so far, the mangroves till today are still growing. Then secondly, in my department of animal and environmental biology, a staff here, Dr. Numbere, is currently working with international bodies to write stories and also give proposals on how to save the mangroves of Niger Delta, because he is well skilled and well knowledge in the issues of mangroves in the Niger Delta.
Thank you for that example. And from these examples, we can say that these methods are actually effective, right? So if we have like in other coastal region, say in Lagos, is there a way that we can also re-implement this kind of, or those kind of bodies or this kind of NGO, or this kind of personalities that are interested in saving mangrove, and then we can recreate something close to that nature, so that for every state where we have this coastal, for every coastal region where we have mangroves, we can actually do like an orientation on how they are able to save their mangroves. Is it possible that we can recreate this models in different states?
Yes, it is 100% possible. Let the communities in which there are mangroves, involve these community members, tell them the use of mangroves and give them alternatives. It is
Can you hear me,
100%.
Elijah?
Sorry?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I was asking if the possibility did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So did you
I
get
said
my
it is
question? My
very
question is,
possible. This model used in the same model used in Rivers State, involving the communities, NGOs growing mangrove seedlings. I can share some pictures. Growing mangrove seedlings, taking these seedlings to the community, involving the community that these seedlings we are growing, see, this is their use. Please help us protect them. Do not cut them. If possible, involve a few youths in the community so that they can watch over the seedlings, so that when they grow, we collect data. Then, importantly as well, we need to start taking records, our researchers and scientists. We need to know the population of mangroves 15 years ago, 14 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, so that we can predict what it will be, and we can also offer solutions to all this. So it is 100% possible to duplicate what we've done in River State and to other states.
yes, thank you very much. I like that inclusion of data, because that's how we are able to properly measure what our current state is. Are we losing on a regular decay, like on having it to be a regular number of depletion? Like we can actually trace the pattern. Is it yearly? Is it monthly or annually? How much mangroves are we losing, or how much are we able to restore these mangroves? So, okay, so my next question now will be, okay, in managing the increasing depletion of our mangroves, because we know that that is actually happening. The mangroves are depleting either because people don't know the importance, or it's just outright neglect. What are the alternatives that we can prefer to these coastal regions, simply because most of their services are gotten from the mangroves, say the extraction of wood for construction or for fire. So what are the alternatives that we can provide to them, where they can get this regular provisions that they get from the mangroves, in order not to kill the mangroves or not to increase the depletion rate of the mangroves?
Thank you so much. Just like other nature-based solutions, this restoration of mangrove, if we need ideas on alternatives to use, we need to think local, think of the past, think local. Okay, let me give you an example. Here in many villages, even in the Niger Delta, they use palm fronds. You know, when you are harvesting banga, you fell down some fronds. They use these fronds as firewood. Then the stalk of the fruits, when you've collected the fruits, they store all these and use them as firewood as well. Now, these are local, but we also have modern means. For example, one of my colleagues was working on making biogas using water hyacinths. Now, it is common that where you see mangroves, you will also see water hyacinths there. And water hyacinths are weeds in the sea because people do not want them. They cover their waterways and kill other life in the sea. Now, we are looking for ways to make biogas using water hyacinth. We can also dry water hyacinth and use it as source of fuel. So instead of cutting down mangroves as firewood, we can use other natural alternatives. We can also decide to make briquettes, and you must have heard of briquettes, and show them. We can also teach them how. We can also teach them how to make briquettes. That this is how you do it. When you do this, this is how you do it. And briquettes are even more effective than mangroves. So I think when we provide these alternatives, mangroves will be restored.
So, if I get you clearly, we're saying we can use. I think briskets are made from rice. Am I correct? Like shaft from the rice, or what are briskets made from now?
They can be collected. They can be made from shafts. They can also be made with sawdust and other materials.
Okay, so briskets from sawdust, and we can also use water hyacinth to be a source of fuel. And while for source of construction, we're talking about palm fronds, how you can cut them down from trees. So if we're at every point where we're saying, oh, don't kill the mangrove, this is what you should do, and we're able to say this is an alternative. So it's not just you are taking away their source of livelihood, and you are not giving an effective solution to what their current issues are. So if we're doing that, I think it will go a long way to say you already have an alternative, so you can use this and preserve the mangrove. Okay, now I'd like to go to our next question, and our next question here is based on regulations now. So I'm going to ask, what would be your recommendation for the government, civil society, private sector in taking actions on mangrove restoration? Because I think basically it's not just about the community at the end of the day. We need to also have some actual law enforcement to guide this project or to this restoration. So what would be your recommendation for these parties?
Okay, if I should speak with government officials, before I recommend anything to them, I'll first of all beg them to stop cutting down the mangroves and building there. Because, most people with money, they love building close to the sea and river so that from your house, you can see these things. So I'll beg them. And also, it is common here in River State that when someone has money, he will look for anywhere water is flowing through, any water channel, he will block it and build in it, causing flooding in the area. So when I have begged these people and now I have given them the importance of mangroves, then I will suggest that instead of just making a law that will ban the community members from cutting down mangroves, this law may be unsustainable because we've not provided sufficient alternatives. They should first of all make a roundtable discussion with the leaders of the community. The community will proffer their own solutions. If the community should say that, okay, if you don't want us to use mangroves, give us this instead. The government will say, oh, we don't want you to use mangrove, but we can give you this. You understand this kind of thing. So in any regulation that the government wants to make, they should first of all discuss with the members of the community, the heads in particular, because those ones know where it pains them the most.
You didn't mention the private sector. We said government, the civil society, and the private sector. Yes, we know that government or they have a control over legislations and rules to say you can't build. Like I think even naturally when you are building, there should be like a land survey. You can have to go and check it at town planning to know which channel water passes through and where you shouldn't build or where you should build. So I think government is able to take control of that. But then what about the private sector? What about the civil societies? What recommendations will you give for us to handle things from their parts?
Okay, thank you. I will suggest that we consult more researchers, more data analysts to proffer sustainable means on how to handle these mangroves, because we can say that let's go and plant more. Meanwhile, it could be that the mangroves are dying not because of human activities, but because of other activities. So while the government is making regulations and rules for the community to follow, NGOs need to think deeper, need to think more sustainably that what really is the root cause of this and how can we solve this. We can also partner with people from that community, people living in the community, to help us watch over the mangroves. I believe that when they see the importance and they see our support, they will happily and willingly help protect mangroves.
Thank you very much for that. So we've seen recommendations from you as against what the government can do, what the civil service can do, and what the private sectors can do. For you on your own individual capacity, where will you say you see the mangroves on a national level? I know that we don't have that data because you already mentioned that we need to keep that data to be sure that we are actually having accuracy in what our plannings are to mitigate this depletion of mangrove. But then, in your own personal capacity, what will you say is the actual state of things, especially from your side in rivers there? And what will you say is the future for the mangrove in the next few years, say 5 years? Do you see any ray of hope? Is it something that can actually be done with all the programs that is being done in your NGO? Or is there something else that we need to do to really accelerate this?
Okay. There was a cleanup exercise that my friends and I did at Eagle Island here in Port Harcourt. During the exercise, that was the first time I ever saw mangroves. The community people there, they were not understanding the joy I was feeling. I ran to the mangroves. I took some pictures of the mangroves. I snapped the flowers. It was flowering actually. So the mangrove was just there. The pollution in the water and other trash really affected it, that in every area you just see some mangroves scattered, maybe one or two in a given location. But remember, I told you that I saw flowers in the mangrove. So naturally, if we can provide alternative, naturally the mangroves, they will replenish, because these are mangroves here. They are flowering, they are producing fruits, and new ones were growing. I actually saw them with my own eyes. So that is it. I believe that if we really find solutions and alternative, we give these alternatives to the community and they accept our alternative, we have ray of hope that our mangroves in the Niger Delta will be saved.
So we've been talking about alternative. You've been able to give us quite a number of alternatives, especially for fuel and then for construction purposes. But then again, do you think we can penetrate this grassroots? Like some for so. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, please come again.
Okay,
Come again.
okay. So I was saying that for the people in the rural community, if we're able to have an alternative, it's one thing to have an alternative. It's another thing to be able to get them to use the alternative provided, because everybody there's just this natural factor that people would like to resist change, right? You are giving them
Yeah.
something new, and for the fact that they are not used to it, or they are not so sure of how beneficial it will be to them, they might not you might just give them the orientation now, show them how to use it, and the next minute when you're gone, they go back to depleting the mangroves. Yes, so what can we do in that space to make sure that this thing is actually being practiced, right? It's not just a one-off. Then two, there are some other people that believe that, oh, mangroves breed mosquitoes, is actually it actually makes the community dirty, or it's not. So how else are we able to explain to these people that there's more, the advantages overweigh what is, just to balance the ecosystem? They're actually there being nursery for fishes. They can, the birds can actually go there to nest and reproduce. So what do we do actually? Because there's the thing about profiling solution, and then there's another thing with following up, right? How do we follow up? How do we ensure that this is continuous and not that when you step back, turn around, they go back to their old ways?
Okay, I'd love to give mention of two things. First of all, the alternatives that we are giving to the communities are actually easier and cheaper alternatives. Just imagine that you have to walk a very long distance to cut down the tree and carry this heavy wood back to your house. It is quite stressful. But now we are giving you the alternative of doing it just in your corner, so that you don't have to walk that long distance. I'm sure you will gladly accept it. Number two, I made mention of data and research. Of course, we need to be checking up on the communities on a regular basis. For example, my NGO here, Prime Initiative for Green Development, whenever we have a talk with the communities, we don't just end it there. We continue to check. And if we have new information that we feel that the community will need, we'll let them know. And so far, they are really cooperative with us. So yeah, as you said, it doesn't just end with starting something. We need to continue it. We need to have this always checking up on the community and collecting data to know the current status, the past status, so that we can predict the future status.
Thank you for that. Thank you for this great insight, because why I keep going back to ask this question is we have people from all walks of life listening to this, and maybe in their own individual capacity, they might be looking at ways to help their community or to sensitize their community so that they can pick one or two things from this topic and be able to administer that in their own local community. So I'm looking at the comment section now. I think this topic is self-explanatory. We have thumbs up from Rona Efiena, but then let's just continue in the absence of questions. So lastly, what I want you to do for us is, in one sentence, what will be your message to the public? What we on today's topic? What's that simple message you want to give? Something we can take back home without trying to remember what you said. Like in a simple sentence, what will be your message to the people out there?
Okay, my message for everyone is that whenever we want to think of nature-based solutions or sustainable solutions, we should always think local. Do not say that mangroves are in America, the mangroves that are dying are in America, nothing concerns us. No, think local. Is it in my community? What can I do in my community to save it? So no matter where we are, do not think of the situation in other places. Think of it in your own place. So think local, look for local solutions and follow up with these solutions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much on this. So if you're just joining us, this is our weekly Climate Wednesday talks. And for this month, our hashtag is Restoration NG. And we've been, like I said, for a couple of weeks, we've been discussing with other guests and my colleagues, and we've had talks on the food insecurity with nature-based solutions. We've had talks about biodiversity and nature-based solutions. Today, we were speaking on the restoration of our mangroves, and we have our able host here, Elijah Rona, who has been giving us very great insights on this topic. So basically, rather than settling for our regular grey infrastructures, what we know as art engineering, there's the need to integrate our natural infrastructure. So that's what you call the eco-based system, or what you call the nature-based solutions, into the hard tech engineering. Because the mitigation of these two, the integration of these two, will actually give us a possible solution, a suitable solution that will be sustainable. And that's what we've been talking about. And a quick recap will be that mangroves are very special. They are much more than what we think. They serve as home to some of our organisms. They serve as home to some of our animals, like the birds, the fishes, and also they serve as a break to some natural disaster. They help us to prevent storm, flooding, and what have you. And also, in order to prevent the mangrove, we have various alternatives to the resources that are gotten from mangroves. We have the water hyacinth, like Mr. Elijah have told us. We have the brisket, which you can also use as a source of fuel. We have the palm fronds, where we can convert for our construction purposes. So we don't necessarily need to deplete this mangrove. So if you're watching us and you have mangroves around you, and you can help us to provide these solutions, and also to enlighten people in your community of what benefits the mangroves provide to us and how we need to sustain them to be able to balance our ecosystem. So that will be all for today. If you have any questions, you can tweet at us on our official channel, Climate Wednesday Twitter. You can also send us emails from on our website, as well as from our email, and then you can visit our website to see more topics and more discussions that we have there. So that will be all for today. Thank you, Mr. Elijah. We are happy to have you. It was great having you, actually, and I really enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
That'll be all for now. Yeah, bye. Yeah.